It's wonderful being here tonight. Baie dankie vir die uitnodiging. En dit is 'n baie belangrike gehoor hierdie. Is 'n gehoor van studenteleiers. Dis die seisoen van studenteverkiesings. En dis nou alles verby hoor ek. En ek wil vir julle geluk wens en vir julle alles van die beste toewens vir wat voorlê in die volgende jaar. Maar ek is ook baie bly vir hierdie geleentheid om met julle te kan praat. Veral nou, want dit is 'n tyd van kritiese gesprekke. That gets to my first point, is that we should not at all be surprised by the turbulence on campuses now. Because South Africa is still a society in transition, and the legacy of the past lingers. It's still here with us, the equality and the poverty and the unemployment. And it's 20 years past in our democracy now. So the born frees are coming of age. You guys are the born frees, and you're now old enough to think for yourselves, and you're old enough to see the problems around you, but you're also young enough to want to do something about it, and you have the energy to want to do something about it. So we should not be surprised at this turbulence. So neither should we be alarmed about restlessness on campuses. Ons moet nie beangs wees oor hierdie onstuimigheid nie. Want verandering is altyd moeilik. En 'n mens kan eintlik sê, as dit nie ongemaklik is nie, dan doen ons dit nie reg nie. En daarom is universiteite so belangrik. Dis daai kritiese denke wat eie is aan universiteite. So van die begin af het ek 'n oop gesprek van gepraat. En 'n oop gesprek beteken, en dit kom van die frase van Johan Degenaar. Now you may know Johan Degenaar was a philosopher, Stellenbosch. He recently died. He was known as the Socrates of Stellenbosch. And the phrase of Socrates that's most important to remember is that Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." The unexamined life is not worth living. En die eintlike punt is, the actual main point of that is, it's not the answers that are that important, it's the questions. We should always question. So what that means is, en wat dit behels, is dat 'n mens in hierdie oop gesprek, this open discussion, dat 'n mens luister en dat 'n mens oop is vir oortuiging. So julle het reg gehoor, luister. En so kom ons praat oor hierdie video. Kom ons praat oor luister video. Want leiers, soos wat ons hier is, ons staan nie kop in die sand nie, ons pak 'n bil by die horings. So the first thing I want to say about the Luister video is to acknowledge that it raises very important issues. I watched it with my wife, and we both found it extremely uncomfortable to watch. Because these are some valid lived experiences. And I don't want to see any student of mine, I don't enjoy knowing that some of my students on campus here have negative experiences. So the video has shortcomings, and I'll get to that in a moment. But nevertheless, it is important to engage with it, because leaders don't skirt issues, they tackle them head on. So what is my response to this video and the debate unfolding currently on Stellenbosch campus? So I'm not going to defend the indefensible. What is the indefensible? It's racism, it's discrimination, it's human rights violations, it's exclusion, it's marginalization. This is wrong. End of story. That's the end of that discussion. Except whatever's wrong must be fixed. And we're attempting to do that. We're committed to doing that. So I can give, and this is a process that's been ongoing for quite a while now, since 1990. Stellenbosch University has been in a process of transformation for a long period of time now. But we've not done enough yet. And I have stated, I think since my tenure started, we have again emphasized a number of these initiatives. And two examples are a lecturer who sent a racist SMS, his service contract was terminated. Two, the HF Avut plaque was removed. So I'm not going to defend the indefensible, but I'm also not going to tolerate the unacceptable. So the unacceptable is disruption, hate speech, violence, destruction of property by whomever. Because these things are also wrong, and we will act against them. Because there are specific rules of conduct and how we engage with each other in this open discussion. So we won't hesitate to take disciplinary action if needed. But we're not victimizing anyone, and I'm certainly not silencing protest, because students should be critical. That is the nature of what Degenaar said, is the open discussion. And we should raise issues, because that is what your role is as a leader, to give guidance. So now let me come back to some of the flaws of the video. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. So the basic tenets of journalism is that it should be accurate, it should be balanced, and it should be fair. Those are the 3 points. So the video in parts is not accurate, because Elsenburg is not part of Stellenbosch University. It's not balanced, because it's patently one-sided, all right? It's not true to the dictum to hear the other side. And it's not fair, because off-campus incidents that happen in pubs or clubs, that's not the university's doing. It's not under our control. Though, I want to hasten to say that. What's wrong is wrong. And we must do everything we can to stop racism everywhere. And I think it's also not fair to insinuate that Stellenbosch University currently, that we do not heed transformation calls and that we're not busy with a process of transformation. So, in the spirit of this, let's take another issue head on. The language of instruction. So, language should not be a barrier to access, but it should be a tool of empowerment. But, you know, I stated it very clearly at the time of my inauguration, is that Stellenbosch is certainly no longer in the past just serving one specific part of the population. It is not an Afrikaans university. It's not an English university. It's not an isiXhosa university. It's a world-class multilingual institution. And it's a national and an international asset that advances knowledge in the service of all. So that's the key, advancing knowledge in the service of all. Because I think it's clear that research now shows that multilingualism or plurilingualism, that gives one a competitive advantage in today's diverse and integrated society. So last year in November, after quite a bit of struggle, Council made a policy decision to put English and Afrikaans on an equal footing as languages of instruction. So it's a multilingual with English and Afrikaans on an equal footing. So now it's being implemented. So this is November, now it's being implemented. So many courses are already being offered fully, either in English or Afrikaans. Other classes might be bilingual, or there's a simultaneous interpreting services. And as has been the case for a long time, is that most textbooks are in English, and you can write all your assignments, tests, and exams in English. So let's take some issues head on again. So there are problems with implementation. We acknowledge that. And we have task teams that look at this, that are investigating this. And we have issued an open invitation to all to raise these issues with us. And we have, and We have received proposals and we are investigating proposals from the SRC and Open Stellenbosch and many other stakeholders. And we will report back to campus and to council on what we find and how we can make things better, how we can address these issues. But I want to address a very important concern as well, there's a fallacy, a denkfout, and I think that's what Degenaar would have called it, a denkfout. A mistake in thinking is to equate the mere presence of Afrikaans with racism. So the parallels are being drawn between Stellenbosch University today and Soweto in 1976. There's a huge difference. So in 1976, Afrikaans was imposed on school learners as part of a system of state discrimination, as part of the apartheid system. That was 76. In 2015, we have a democratic constitution in place with a Bill of Rights, enshrining the values of human dignity, equality, and freedom. And the quote is that everyone has the right to receive education in official language of their choice in public educational institutions. But there are qualifications. So everyone has the right to receive education in an official language of their choice. But the qualification would be where reasonably practical to do so. And that is what we're trying to do. That's what the process of implementation and reviewing that and fixing those things that are proving tough to do. There's also qualification that we may not resist access. So we're not doing that. This is a English as an equal status. But a language issue is never easy to handle. I fully acknowledge that, and we as leaders should fully acknowledge that. In the contrary, it's extremely complex. So there was an American philosopher, H.L. Mencken, who was actually a journalist as well, who said, for every complex problem, there's a solution that is easy, simple, and wrong. All right? So this is a very complex issue. And the other issue in this debate, that as we engage in this open discussion with each other, is that we must be careful to resort to what's termed by folks who deal with cognitive behavioral therapy. And these are what they call the so-called the cognitive distortions when we speak to each other. And what are the cognitive distortions? That's emotional reasoning, it's labeling, it's overgeneralizing, and it's blaming. We need to be cognizant of that and be careful. Because in the end, we're in a university. This is a great place to be. This is an exciting space. And true, what you leaders and what we should be doing is true to the Socratic method that I referred to earlier on. We should not be teaching you what to think. It's the questions that are important, not necessarily the answers, but how to think. Not what to think, but how to think. Critical thinking. And critical thinking means that you've got to teach and help your fellow students, those whom you lead, to question unexamined beliefs, received wisdom, rhetoric. Question these things. Because even though it might be uncomfortable or painful. So our role, all of us here, it's a collective role, would be to facilitate critical thinking. But then we must practice it ourselves. So what does that mean? We need to go beyond our borders. We need to go out of our comfort zones. We need to expose ourselves to other perspectives. We need to put ourselves in the shoes of others. And that may not be easy to do for many of us, given some of the backgrounds that we come from. And it's actually pretty hard, but it's the right thing to do. besides because the benefits far outweigh the costs. What are the examples at Stellenbosch that I think that would be signify this? I think it's the new resident placement policy. So the emphasis is on greater integration, people getting from different backgrounds to know each other, and it's the only way for us to move beyond superficial stereotypes. I think another great example is the Triple L initiative, the Listen, Live and Learn, which is not restricted to the Triple L village, and the principles are applied throughout the student community. And it's actually a little bit ironic that the title of the video is Luister video. I mean, listen, live and learn. This is what we're doing, is live, listen and learn. So we're taking it way beyond that. So because this aspect, the question of active listening, which is it's based on that, the Triple L initiative, it's active listening. So that's the sound academic research that underpins that, because that encourages the pursuit of ideological pluralism, a safe space for all perspectives, reasoned disagreement that allows for principled dissent and multiple interpretations. In the end, in the spirit of Ubuntu, I am because you are. We're all stronger because we're all together. So Stellenbosch is becoming much more diverse. So just some thoughts on that. So it's interesting to note when Madiba was released in 1990, there were less than 1,000 black, colored, and Indian students on this campus. So now we have 11,500. So it's nearly 37% of the student body and 50% of postgraduates. So, and we're on our way to 50% by 2020, and that's our conservative goal. Diversity is an absolute requirement for excellence, because that allows us to have a variety of people, ideas that would broaden the mind, and it enriches us. And that is our vision. We want to be more welcoming and we want to be more inclusive. But let's, again, take the problem full on. If we want to do that, that puts our institutional culture in the spotlight. And it must change for the better. There's no doubt about it. And that's the challenge that we as leaders face and that we could all help each other with. So there's an interesting literature around the concept of critical mass. So there was a UN gender study that found that only if you have a critical mass of women, then that allows female politicians to bring different values to public life. So you need a certain critical mass of female politicians to bring those specific issues to public life. And actually, about 30 to 35% of any particular population is the point at which a minority are able to influence the dominant culture. So it's 30 to 35%. So this is a principle that can be generally applied to society, and it's clear that it also applies here at Marty's, because we've passed that point in both our student body and also our staff body. So that's another reason why we should not at all be surprised for calls for our institutional culture to change. There's nothing wrong with that. It's fair game. Now, Malcolm Gladwell, in his book Blink, also made an interesting analogy to a story about attitudes. He said, our actions are influenced by our attitudes. So we have conscious attitudes. Those are the ones that we choose. But then we also have unconscious attitudes. And that's the product of what we are exposed to. Unconscious attitudes. So it's not enough for us to show a mere commitment to equality, but we have to expose ourselves to the other on a regular basis. So the point of that is that we need to open Stellenbosch University even more. Let us have open discussions, and let us be open to change. And let us all take 100% responsibility for the change we want to see, because it's a collective duty we have. So we are all 100% responsible for this. So in closing, so I'm a Marty alumnus, it's an oud Marty. But I know full well that the Stellenbosch University of the past is not the Stellenbosch University of the future that I want to see, and nor should it be. And that we are on a journey of transformation. Now, and it's a journey that will never end, because that is actually the definition of higher education, is that it never ends. There will always be transformation, and that's an ongoing journey. Now, Madiba said the best way to change the world is through education, and that is what you are receiving here, a quality education. And as a higher education institution at Stellenbosch, we transform. We change the world through learning and teaching. We're empowering students and lecturers. We change the world through research, through the impact of new knowledge. And we change the world through engagement with communities. For example, just this past Saturday, I was at Kayamandi at the launch of an oral history heritage research project, where our Department of History is intimately engaged with the community through teaching, field workers to take these oral histories from inhabitants of Kayamandi. Kayamandi is a township that was founded in 1941. It's actually the second oldest black township in the Cape after Langa. But it is to get the oral histories from these people. We're starting with high school students that will come up with biographies of prominent people in the community. So that's through engagement with communities and through research. But through doing these things, teaching and learning, transformation through teaching and learning, research, interaction with communities, we actually undergo fundamental change ourselves. I've spoken to a few of you here tonight, and you told me that you're in third year, but you're a different person to what you were when you started here in your first year. So this change is a fundamental change in ourselves, but it's also a fundamental change in our institution and us as individuals. That's the challenge. So it's a challenge that we all have. But as Gandhi put it, be the change you want to see. And that is something that we all have to take responsibility for, because we're in this, all of us together, 100%. Thank you very much.